now, I mean, if not now, the time is to be like long only, right? Like when is it? I don't know.
Yep.
It's right now. And I mean, it's now, it's like the perfect time to kind of like be allocated, to just like also lean back. I mean, right now it's also like what we are discussing right now. Now it's there's like the hardest part, right? And now it's like to have like kind of like diamond hands or something, like if you want to frame it like this, because what you don't want to do is kind of like to f this up and to sell too
Yep.
early, to kind of like miss out on potentially one of the like biggest runs in history.
Welcome to the 1 to 1 Million podcast, your weekly crypto alpha for those who never quit. Today I have on the pod Simon, a VC that's pretty prominent on Twitter. I really like his takes and his thoughts on the market, and we both happen to be bulls on WINR. And so we dive into a couple different things in this podcast. We do talk about WINR, kind of his bull thesis and why his fund has invested so heavily into WINR. We weirdly talk about Research Coin because he has a scientific background. He's not invested at all into Research Coin, but we go in a little bit into that. And then overall, we just talk about the market. What's going on with the market? Do we see a bull run happening in 2025? What do we think is going to come from Trump being elected, Republicans taking the House and the Senate? And, Elon wanting to do Doge and all this massive deregulation that could be coming, the Fed rate cuts, global liquidity. We dive into all these things, what it means for crypto, what we see happening as a result. And I got to tell you, just like as a warning, this is like an ultra bullish episode. And so if you want just like a deep bull case for what's coming and some of these projects like Research Coin and WINR, this is going to be a really great episode for you. Let's dive in. I guess just to start off, can you introduce yourself, how you got started in crypto? I know a little bit about you, like you do some VC deals, different things like that, or you have your own kind of like firm or whatever. Can you go into those details?
Actually, my story is kind of random. I mean, I come from a background which is like completely different from crypto or finance. So I was actually striving for a career in science. So I was studying biology. I actually did my PhD in like cancer research. And I was always kind of like fascinated by crypto markets. I was always kind of like investing just like as a student, as a retailer, right? And in ETH and crypto since like, let's say early 2017, kind of. And at some point, like I realized that like standing in the lab for the rest of my life is not really what I was looking for. And back then I met my former co-partners who were kind of like in a similar situation. I mean, they had like a traditional VC background and we're just like fascinated about crypto and we're like, okay, let's just try doing it full time. And we started off as kind of like a research house. Let's say like a very poor Delphi Digital or Blockworks research kind of, right? And so we issued these research reports about like secondary market investments, where we deep dived into the tech, like the token economics, the team, and basically gave like ratings of whether we think it's like a good investment or not. And this worked kind of very well. Somehow, I mean, it was good for us because we were building like our expertise, right? We built a network for ourselves because we were always like collaborating with the projects themselves, like to also get some insights. We built like some visibility, some kind of like a community. And quite quickly, actually, we got access to like early stage deal flow because there were the projects where it was saying like, oh, could we have like this research report because like we are having TGE next month, it would be like such a good marketing and stuff, right? And so this is how we got started somehow, like with exploring these deals. And at some point, it was obviously then quite a conflict of interest. So we didn't really want to kind of like get paid for reports or like invest into like seed stages and then give like, then it's kind of hard to give like a bad rating, kind of, you know? And so this is when we pivoted to
Yeah.
Moonrock Capital in 2019 and started with investing our own money basically in pre-seed and seed stages. We are very agnostic to verticals and ecosystems. And I think it's quite characteristic for us as well that we are very, very hands-on with the projects that we're investing in. So we see ourselves as kind of like extended team members, kind of like an incubator. We just want to actively push our teams and projects that we're investing in to just like accelerate their success.
So with your science background, I'm just kind of curious, do you do any anything in the DeSci space in crypto?
Yeah, I mean, I'm very bullish on the vertical. Actually, I just tweeted it out before that like DeSci will be like one of the least obvious winners of like this industry, right? Coming out of this industry, I definitely see how broke it is, like how monopolistic it is, how centralized it is, basically, right? And it's such a conservative space that faces like a lot of challenges, and it's kind of like a vicious cycle where you don't really get out. So I definitely see how the Web3 space can solve like a lot of these challenges. And this was also kind of like part of the reason why I moved out, because it's like, it's so broken, it's so annoying, and like everyone, I mean, people are kind of like positioning themselves as they would kind of like change the world, and they would like rescue lives and stuff, right? But eventually they are just money driven, and they are just looking kind of like similar to crypto, like what is the hype narrative in science right now? Because this is what I will do research for, because then I get another grant, right? And I get like another prestigious paper where I can publish in and stuff. And this is how people are driven in this space. And this is actually not how it should be. So I love DeSci for sure, to keep it short. I mean, what the people over at like Molecule, for example, are doing. We have like 2 portfolio companies with Data Lake and CryoDAO. I think there's great stuff happening. It's just like so ambitious, and it will definitely take some time. But like, if we are getting there, it's like a massive industry and like a huge market that we can tackle.
That's funny. I have CryoDAO too. I forget how I got into that, but I think that this cycle, see, I don't know if DeSci will do amazing this cycle or not, but like in the long run, I really, same thing. I think DeSci has massive potential, especially if you think about like funding science, and like creating an alternative funding source for science.
Totally.
Just because in crypto, we're super good at funding anything. Like
totally,
come up with the stupidest meme coin and we'll take it to $1 billion valuation. Exactly. And I think that money would be a lot better used, like bettering the world in some way.
Yeah.
Are you familiar at all with Brian Armstrong's research coin?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked into it like too deeply. As far as I know, it's kind of like a decentralized publishing platform, right? Unfortunately, I got it on my radar like way too late when it was pumping to, I don't know, like 600 million, and it was kind of hot back then. Funnily, this was like one of the ideas that I was suggesting to our incubator at some point. I was actually looking for teams who were like building exactly that. I'm very happy that I didn't find them, because otherwise they would like be competing with Brian Armstrong right now. But it totally makes sense. I mean, this is exactly one of the problems that I was facing. I mean, the problem is like that, like these prestigious papers have kind of like a monopoly, right? And everyone just wants to publish in Nature or whatever, right? Because then they are like prestigious professors, and they get like another grant way more easy, right? And then it's like this vicious cycle where you're in. And I think if people would, or like researchers would take the step like to just publish to something like Research Hub, this would like allow to solve like a lot of problems. I think the idea is genius, and to just like kind of like attract smart people with incentives to kind of like give neutral reviews. Because what's also very interesting, like in science, you go into topics like that deeply that you don't have like many experts left, right? I was like I spent like some time in Oxford as well. And what I heard there is like, it's kind of crazy, because like obviously like a professor at Oxford is like one of the biggest experts in the world for this like particular topic, right? And if they publish like a paper, and then there are like there may be like 3 to 4 other professors in the world who could even review this, right? Who could even like give their 2 cents whether this is bullshit or just like amazing findings, right? and it's anonymous in theory, right? But obviously, like all of them know each other, right? I mean, and they know their writing styles and stuff, and like obviously I will kind of like give green light to your paper, right? Because I would be afraid if I don't do it, then you will kind of like pass on my paper like next month or something.
Yep.
And this is how it's kind of like also like the circle jerk and like this insider game, how we have it in crypto as well, and which definitely shouldn't be the case if you try to kind of like do honest research, right? I mean, even like some people at Oxford were like faking results, you know, and I was like, aren't you afraid that like this will come out? And then they're like, I mean, obviously no one asked. We are Oxford. We are the best. So I mean, we just fake results if we need them, so we can publish quicker. It's crazy.
That is crazy. When you say a couple $100 billion for research coin, are you talking about the FDV? Because the market cap's only like 10 million or 15 million or something like that.
I think back then when I was looking at it, it was like 500 million FTV or something like this. It's 250 now. Okay, it's like 10% circulating. Yeah, I'm usually like when I'm talking about valuations, I'm usually referring to the fully diluted valuations.
FTV. So I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on this, because so with something like Research Coin, they distribute their tokens. They have a really long time frame, so it's over the next 10 years. Those tokens come into circulation. So would that hold you back? Do you give a lot of weight to the FDV in a scenario like that, where it's these tokens are going to come out over the next 10 years? Like, for example, let's say you're playing this cycle and you're like, hey, we're going to peak in 2025. We're going to have this massive bull run. Research coins sitting at like 10, 15 million market cap. The FDV is high, but we're not going to see those coins for a long, long time because it's so low float, especially with Brian Armstrong, kind of the narrative, maybe getting listed on Coinbase, things like that. Couldn't it run up pretty high in price and that be a good play? Or is that different as a VC? What are your thoughts on that?
It's definitely a good point. I mean, it always like depends on like what kind of point of view you have, right? Whether, I mean, obviously for me, they're like investments and they're like trades, right? I mean, trades obviously are rather opportunistic, where we also look at kind of like the market where we're currently at, and where I rather have like a short-term perspective. Investments for me are rather like, how would I believe can this play out over like the next maybe 2 to 3, but maybe also 5 to 10 years, right? And obviously, what you said, it's like it's super important to obviously look at like token metrics, right? To see how is the vesting scheduled, kind of like structured. I mean, what kind of overhang do we still have? Like, how will it unlock and why will it unlock, right? I mean, obviously, it's also like a massive difference whether we have like a massive investor unlock coming where everyone is sitting like on 100x. Versus this is just like incentives that are like unlocking over like 10 years. And like if they are unlocking, it's also something good, right? Because this means we are incentivizing people on the platform. So we are creating value on the platform. So this is kind of like a positive feedback loop effect again. So this is, I think it's like, to sum it up, I think I can't really answer it because it totally depends on the details of like the respective token metrics. And usually, I mean, the first thing that I'm looking at is like fully diluted valuation, because we are so used to like low float, high FTV right now. I mean, obviously, like looking at market cap can get you burned quite quickly. But I mean, if you're really getting down to kind of like doing an investment, right, you obviously you're looking into those details.
No, I totally agree. The FDV is not a one size fit all. There are like I look at something like Immutable, they have a difference in their FDV, but like all those tokens are held by them, and they go through in order for them to actually hit the market, they have to go through performance vesting schedules. And so that's the scenario where you're like, okay, this is a higher FDV, but the path for those tokens to hit the market is a pretty long path, and it's a hard path. And like you said, it's performance tied. So they're going to see ideally a performance boost before those tokens hit the market as well. So that's a really good point. In the case of Research Coin, as far as my understanding, it is they're incentives tokens, and that's why they take 10 years. It's like they're there for the platform to incentivize people to come use it over the next like decade or whatever. Yeah,
that totally makes sense, because I mean, obviously, like every single review is like bring value to the platform, right? So I actually want to give out those incentives. I mean, it totally makes sense. I just think it's like still it's super ambitious, right? I mean, because it kind of like it takes like some of the like leading researchers of the world to kind of like say, okay, I have like big findings here. I actually neglect kind of like publishing into like one of the best papers in the world, which is like very prestigious, because I rather go to like Research Hub, and because they don't really care about incentives, right? I mean, those very, very good researchers obviously don't really have like money issues, but it's about about kind of like the reputation, right? And I mean, to get to a point where Research Hub can actually provide reputation to like the world's best researchers out there, it's kind of like it's like a chicken egg problem, kind of.
Yeah. I don't want to go too far into Research Hub, but I did I did want to ask you, since you have this background, because I am somebody who is invested in Research Hub. So and I'm really bullish on it, purely based off the idea that in 2025 I think it'll pop. I think we'll see a Coinbase listing based off of the connection to Brian Armstrong. I think the narrative of like this Brian Armstrong's the co-founder is actually really all I care about, not as much of the fundamentals. It's more of a narrative play.
Totally.
And but on the fundamentals chicken and egg problem, I think they plan on doing funding as well. So the funding and your reputation go together. Wouldn't that be a good incentive? Like if a developer or scientists are trying to get funding for the research, so then they post the research on the platform, they're really well reviewed on there. And then if they're able to tap into billions of dollars of funding via crypto, wouldn't that be a pretty powerful incentive mechanism?
That would be actually super cool, yeah? Because like, I mean, like the reputation, like what most researchers care about is like mostly due to like getting grants and getting funding, right? So they can like fund the research that they want to. And if they would get like more independency, like also from crypto, that would totally make sense. If Brian Armstrong and Research Hub is planning something like this, it would be pretty cool.
I am curious, as a VC, do you invest in the liquid markets, or is it just seed deal? Like, are you just investing like pre-launch, or do you buy liquid tokens?
Yeah. Maybe to also add like to the story that I was talking to you about like in the beginning, right? I mean, it's maybe important to mention that we are not like a very classic traditional VC like as the others out there. We are like a prop VC, and we are like a prop investment house, right? So it's all our own capital. So basically we can do whatever we want. We don't have like an investment mandate where we promise like our LPs like some stuff that we need to be after, right? So yes, like we have kind of like a hybrid structure, like a hybrid strategy. I would say the ratio is kind of like 50-50, where we like 50% of our portfolio we actively invest into like liquid stuff. And the other 50% are rather like venture deals, like incubations, pre-seed and seed stages, stuff like this.
Okay. And how bullish are you on liquid tokens right now? Because I feel like right now, liquid tokens, alts are just like primed, especially after the Trump win. I feel like the market is not pricing this in properly, and the entire fundamental like playing board has shifted in favor of alts and crypto and deregulation and fee switches and revenues. And I'm like so pumped, and I'm like shocked the market's not pumping harder. And I can't see how that can't last. What are your thoughts on liquid tokens and alts and all that?
Totally agreed. I mean, I'm super bullish. I mean, everyone internally is getting like very excited right now. To be honest, we are very, very selective and careful with like primary investments right now. So wherever we invest in, we kind of like need to build like the conviction that this is like in the worst case, like kind of like a multi-cycle play, right? And where we need to build it. I mean, because obviously like with your seed stages and like early investments, you have like very long vestings, right? I mean, it's kind of like normal that you have like 4 years vesting. And so if you invest into those, then you need to be kind of like sure this is not just like a narrative trade or something, right? I mean, like, I don't know, gaming is hyped right now. Let's buy some gaming tokens or something. But this needs to be like fundamentally strong, and it needs to kind of like prevail, like regardless of markets, regardless of narratives. So this is why right now, because we are kind of like, we are entering like this parabolic stage of the market, right? Where we believe personally and this will last like 12 months max, right? And we don't necessarily need like lower conviction plays with crazy vesting. So this is why we are very, very bullish on the liquid markets. We are also kind of like very risk affine and like also like very degen, I would say. So we are fully allocated. So we are like, we have left everything allocated in like
Same.
liquid positions right now. And because we also think it's prime to now, I mean, if not now, the time is to be like long only, right? Like when is it? I don't know.
Yep.
It's right now. And I mean, it's now, it's like the perfect time to kind of like be allocated, to just like also lean back. I mean, right now it's also like what we are discussing right now. Now there's like the hardest part, right? And now it's like to have like kind of like diamond hands or something, like if you want to frame it like this, because what you don't want to do is kind of like to f this up and to sell too early, to kind of like miss out on potentially one of the like the biggest runs in history. But you also don't want to kind of like get in love with your bags and just like miss out on the top, right? I mean, this is like the hardest part as always. But for now, I can say it's definitely the time to be fully allocated long only.
I agree with you 100%. I was literally thinking, I was doing a walk yesterday, and I was thinking about the fact that last cycle there was, and I don't mean to be rude at all, but there was a lot of like not very smart people who made a fortune investing in crypto because they were just absolute degens early in the cycle. They took risk at the right portion of the cycle, and then they made a fortune. And a lot of those same people lost that fortune later in the cycle because they didn't know how to stop taking risks. But yeah, totally. I think we're at the stage of the cycle where it's like it's a go. It's a green light. Like
although I think this is going to be what's going to be like very different this time. You know, I mean, obviously this is also like my third cycle already now, and like the last two were kind of like where we had like these stupid seasons, right? Where you could just like, everyone was looking like a genius. You could just like spray and pray around into like every random coin without like anything behind it, right? And it was just going up. I mean, it was like pure bullshit, and you still pulled like 100x on it. I think this is going to be like very different this time. I think like what's going to be different this time in the market is that like everything became like so much more competitive, and there's so much more money into the market. There's so many more professional investors, right? I mean, last cycle, so it was just degens, like, also like there are so many more assets. I mean, it literally it's just impossible that everything is sending, right? So you need to do like more due diligence. You need to do like more research to kind of actually find those hidden gems, right? That are still like massively undervalued, that have like this asymmetrical upside. Because if you don't do it, then I would rather recommend to just like hold like Sol, ETH, and then you're better off probably.
It's like last cycle when, remember the stage in the market where there was like a million dexes, where it's like every chain had like 20 dexes. It kind of feels like that. Like I kind of think of it less as maybe the crypto market as a whole, but like sections, right? So like if you're looking at layer twos, like layer twos are pretty stacked right now. You probably just want to bet on the leads, the winners, and not the long tail of assets. In the same way, like something like DeSci is under allocated to. So if that section were to pop, probably all the DeSci projects would pop, because there's just not a lot of DeSci projects. But crypto gaming, I think, also is under allocated to by most of the professional investors. Meme coins are like way over allocated to, in my opinion. I still think they're going to do really well, but 99% of them aren't. It's just going to be like a couple of them that are going to be this crazy success stories that people make millions on, but guessing which ones those are, it's going to be really, really hard. With blue chips like Doge and stuff like that. But yeah, no, I agree with everything you're saying. What are your current thoughts on just like the market as a whole? You kind of mentioned it. You said that you think we're going into a parabolic phase. And I totally agree. I agree with that. Why do you think, though, we're going into the parabolic phase? And what else do you think could be different this time?
I mean, right now we are super bullish. I mean, to be honest, we also have been like very, very bullish already before the elections. So in our opinion, we are already like in a bull market for more than a year, basically, right?
Yep.
And obviously, like the elections right now and like the outcome that Trump was elected is like a huge catalyst, right? I mean, I mean, like from a macro
Huge.
perspective, it's like, yeah, it's huge. I mean, first of all, it was like huge enough that like crypto was such a big topic during the elections,
Yep.
right? I mean, this already speaks for itself, like how far we have come, like with this industry, right? That there are like so many
Yeah.
people that is like kind of like that presidents are realizing that they are baiting like the people to get
Yeah.
like their votes like with crypto. I mean, actually getting there is like making me proud enough already. And but also with Trump, I mean, it's very, I mean, it's no secret, it's very obvious that he's going to print like way more than Kamala would have, right? So, and this is the only thing that we are looking at. And like the only thing that we are looking at is like liquidity cycles and money supply, right? And as long as like governments keep printing and adding to the money supply, there's just like way more money to invest in, right? And investors are getting like way more risk on. They're going down the risk curve. And the good thing is that eventually this will have like dripping effects, and like crypto is like on the very end of the curve, right? It's like the riskiest asset, like with the most asymmetrical returns. And this is just like what people in such environments love. And I think it's very obvious that like crypto will be like a massive winner like from those elections, but also from the regulatory side. I think it's very obvious right now that like so many whales, so many institutions were just like sidelined looking for those results, because right now like regulatory reasons are not really an issue anymore, right? They're not really a reason anymore to hold back on, like, let's
Yeah.
say, I mean, it was pretty obvious yesterday. I mean, Coinbase, like the stock pumped 30%. I mean, it's
Yeah.
like it's like, I don't know even like what the valuation right now is, like 60, 70 billion or something, right? I mean, imagine how much liquidity you need to pump such an asset. And because everyone was just looking at it, and now it's pretty obvious like Coinbase won't have like big problems with the SEC anymore, right? So
Yep.
everyone was just waiting on the sidelines to aid in with their money. And it was the same like with DeFi coins, Uniswap, Aave, and stuff. And I think this is right now also like the ETH ETF should get like way more love now, because actually like
Yep.
the launch until now was like very disappointing, and we already see it now like with ETH outperforming. And so I think, yeah, to sum it up, like super bullish on the next 6 to 12 months. I think we will get back to like a, let's say, parabolic run, how we are used to it. I just think like the details of it will be different, right? That not everything, like every shitcoin will pump regardless, but there will be more of like a natural selection actually.
We're going to get so many new tokens launching, and the wealth effect from those new tokens, because like new tokens launching is a form of money creation. Like it creates a form of leverage in the system. That is liquidity creation, and we're going to see that happen all over the place. And like you said, stocks are going up, everything's going up. I think they're pricing in the future, right? They seem to be very optimistic about what's going to come. I think some of that could be like tax cuts are a huge one. Like tax cuts are a source of like liquidity into the market. One thing you said that I've heard a couple people say that, and I actually disagree with it. So I'm always curious on like why people believe this. I've heard a lot of people say that they think either that Trump's going to print as much as Kamala, or that Trump's going to print money more than Kamala. And from my perspective, I've seen like with Elon and Vivek and these guys wanting to like massively deregulate the Department of Government Efficiency, Doge, cutting all these regulations, downsizing the government. Vivek's talked about how Trump said they want to do this thing where they try to trim 75% of the government. That's like way over the top ambitious. But in general, if they can downsize at all the government, wouldn't that be a lot less spending, a lot less money printing?
I mean, maybe it's like just wrong to say they expect him to print like crazy, but I mean the predictions are that he will add way more to that than like Kamala will do, right? And if you're talking about like money supply, everyone is usually talking about like the M2 money supply, and like adding that is basically adding to the money supply, right? And just like historically spoken and looking at the charts, as long as money supply is going up, this basically means liquidity is going up, and this just means like there's a risk on environment.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be near impossible for anyone at this point to kind of turn things around in a 4-year period as far as like the debt goes and all that kind of stuff. So I think you are correct in that we're going to get, we got to service the debt. We have money printing. Like these are really long-term problems that are going to keep lasting for a long time. So
totally. This is also, maybe you also have to differentiate it. I mean, when I'm looking at this, right, I mean, it's kind of like tough to combine like macro views like with crypto views, right? Because I mean, nothing could be like shorter term than like the mindset of crypto people, right? I mean, we are looking at like the next 6 to 12 months right now, but from a macro perspective, this is nothing, right? This is like the shortest term possible, right? So this is why we also we always try to reevaluate then our thinkings, and like right now it's going to be like super bullish, obviously, but in 12 months we're probably going to reevaluate to kind of like look at what kind of consequences this is going to have, like also from an inflationary perspective, right? From interest rates and stuff. So in crypto, this is just like work in progress. You can't really like plan, I don't know, 4 years ahead. I think it's kind of tough.
It is very tough to plan 4 years ahead. But I would say, okay, even outside of money printing, we have rate cuts in the US. We might get another decision on that today. We have China doing a bunch of stimulus. We have the UK cutting rates. And just so many different catalysts that have, I mean, totally, I don't know if I could like wish a better setup for like a bull market into existence at this point.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think we also really shouldn't like underestimate like how much of kind of like a relief it is that we have like a pro crypto regime right now, right? I mean, this is just like, I mean, especially for institutions, because we're also kind of like looking at our with our Dijon glasses onto the market, right? But I mean, like from the perspective of institutions, like the big money that is actually able to move the market, right? This is like a huge topic. And I think this is like, it's massively bullish right now.
Massively bullish. And I keep thinking about, and I know this is such a long shot, but we are talking about Elon and he does pull off some pretty insane things. I keep thinking about the fact that like, if you think about the SEC originally, when it was created, it was like a pretty common sense thing. Like anyone could like basically issue a stock. They were scamming. There's all kinds of scams. We see the same thing in crypto because anyone could issue a token. And so they came out with the SEC to say, hey, let's stop some of these scams. And it was like really basic paperwork. Anyone could still launch a stock, but they had like basic accountability. Okay. And that has evolved into like today, you have to spend millions and millions of dollars on just legal fees to launch an IPO, a company. It's really, really insane. And it's become a far cry from what it was originally intended to be. And imagine if we could peel that back to where it was like if we could have security like properties on chain and it was just a normal thing. We didn't have to deal with all of these insane regulations. If we could get there, man, I think it's going to get absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I would love that. I mean, another thing that we maybe underestimate is like also like, I mean, I think Trump said this like during the campaign, right? But also like Cynthia Lummis tweeted that yesterday. I mean, imagine the US is actually building like a Bitcoin strategic reserve. I mean, this is like, it couldn't get crazier than this. I mean, also if they do it and they are done, I mean, really I think we're also done with the industry, right? And I probably need to look for like another industry because like who else is going to buy then? I mean, it's like, it's insane.
Yeah, and when the U.S. does a Bitcoin reserve, every other country is now forced to ask themselves, do they need a Bitcoin reserve? And then when Bitcoin massively pumps in price, everyone's going to look at ETH and say, wow, this one's undervalued relative. That's going to pump in price. And it just the wealth effects that flow into the space via leverage and these things going up. I think there is a scenario. Like I said, I couldn't wish into existence a better setup for going into this bull cycle. I think there's a scenario that this 2025 bull cycle is the greatest bull cycle we've ever seen.
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying this as well. I mean, fingers crossed. I mean, I think this is what everyone is here for right now, right?
Well, one of the reasons we connected is because I saw your bull post on WINR on Twitter. And that got me, I was like, oh, hey, another guy that likes WINR. I feel like I'm a crazy person over here because I've been watching this team build. They've got, that project went from like one of my like lower conviction to one of my highest conviction projects over the course of the last year, just watching how fast and how much that they've built. and
Mm.
in the market kind of direction with prediction markets taking off, meme launchpads taking off. What is your kind of conviction and bull case behind WINR? Like, why are you so pumped on them?
So we invested first like in, I think it was last year, like early 23 when they came out. And I mean, I have to say that like I know the team already since like 2019. So they're in the industry for forever already. They're quite OGs actually. And I also know they wouldn't really need to build this, right? They are not driven by kind of like, oh, okay, we could make some money with it, but it's just like they love to build this, right? They are gamblers themselves, and this is like they saw kind of like the problem in the industry and they wanted to solve it. I mean, this is kind of like the perfect start already for like a startup, you know? And so I would say I'm like a gambler myself. This is probably how I ended up in crypto. And I used to have like these play nights with like friends and stuff where we're just like playing stake and stuff and having some beers. It's like super fun. And so obviously we also observed like how Robit was taking off and stuff. And I was also playing like with Robit, and then I did like with Shuffle and stuff. And I was like, this is like such bullshit. This is like no different than stake at all, right? I mean, it's just like, okay, now I can like farm like an airdrop just by like playing slots or something like this. But it's stupid. It's absolutely, there's like no value proposition. Like no one from like the non-crypto world will ever like move from stake to Shuffle or something. I think it's super stupid. And this is how we got like WINR on our radar. I mean, obviously they approached us because we knew each other for ages already. And I think WINR is really doing something where they took like a kind of like a traditional real world problem. They took like Web3 technology and they just like made something innovative and created like a solution for a real world problem, right? And I mean, this sounds like they are changing the world now. I mean, still gambling, but I mean, it totally makes sense. And what I like about WINR is that they have like rather like this. So like first of all, they're making like gambling really decentralized, right? They are making it like really transparent. I mean, I'm still kind of like afraid that like Robit at some point is going to be like another kind of like FTX scenario or whatever, because they're just like saying they're printing like a lot of money and they are burning like a lot of tokens, right?
Why is the token not going up?
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's so cool that, I mean, this is like the Web3 ethos, right? It's like decentralized, it's non-custodial, it's like totally transparent, everything is on chain. And the thing is, I was observing them kind of because like obviously they have been like much more quiet than over like the last 6 to 12 months because they were just building like their WINR chain. And I mean, obviously, like the problems that they had, they wanted to have like kind of like an on-chain experience and that is still kind of like a stake experience, right? That you don't even realize you're on-chain and that everything is like as scalable, like everything has like no latency and stuff. And like the middleware that was existing in this market was just not enough, right? I mean, they tried to work like with other providers. It was not enough. So they kind of like decided to build out everything by themselves, which is like actually very ambitious. And this is why it took them so long over the last 6 to 12 months, right? But I was constantly following the progress, and actually I think what they build right now is like an absolute no-brainer. I mean, I played it myself, and that you have like really this stake experience, but actually everything, like every single spin is like an on-chain transaction without like latency at all and stuff. It's absolutely crazy. So like we doubled up on our like initial investments from last year. So we doubled our position, and because I mean it's like a 30 million valuation. It's like, and it's fully liquid, right? I mean it's like much cheaper than like most like primary deals out there. And yeah, I think I just love what they built. And I mean also if you think about it, it's like the upside is way crazier than like with every Robit and Shuffle, because they could like horizontally scale, right? I mean, they would basically allow for like hundreds of Robits and Shuffles to build on top of like the infrastructure that they've built. And then you can become like the LP, you can become the house of the casino, which is like the biggest no-brainer of all, because I mean, it's like, it's hard coded that like gamblers will lose over time. And it's just like there's no way around it, right? And so I mean it's like a way bigger no-brainer to become like an LP there than like at any DeFi protocol. And so I think like taking this combined like with amazing tokenomics that just like accrue all of this value that is like naturally coming just like with users. And I think it's like an absolute no-brainer. Right now, like the only thing that they need is like users now, but we see this already like ramping up already, because this is just like a marketing issue, right? And I know they're great at marketing.
I agree 100%. When I look at crypto right now, I see two directions forward, and almost we use the word crypto, but there's like two separate industries. There is like DeFi and all like DeSci and all this whole like sector of crypto that's like very much about like open finance and building a better financial system. And then there's like this other section of crypto. It's literally just about gambling. It's meme coins and prediction markets. And we have found out over the last couple of years that like this section is huge and there's a massive use case. There's a massive product market fit. People love it. And so like while Ethereum and like a lot of these other things are maybe built for this open finance world, I think WINR is like building this very specialized chain environment for this this gambling side of crypto, which I think will be huge. The more that the more that countries print money, the more poorer people feel, the more inclined they are to gamble, because the more they're like, hey, I can't get this house any other way. I might as well gamble. And so that trend's not going to turn around anytime soon. So I think in a lot of ways, WINR is competing with something like Solana, which Solana is like a lot of their usage currently comes from these degens using it, right? But they're not specializing for that. They're more competing with Ethereum. They want DeFi and everything to come over there, which is probably the right move for them. But I can imagine in the future, WINR kind of just taking this whole section of crypto that is this gambling section, and like it's all on WINR. All that happens on WINR. And I think the upside is massive, especially if you think meme coins and all this stuff's going to continue. Then WINR is like a bet in that direction, and it is so undervalued for what they're building.
Yeah, totally. I mean, also, what's the value accrual of Solana, right? I mean, I think, I mean, obviously, I mean, there is like a lot of value for Solana, but I mean, eventually the value accrual for, like, let's say WINR would have like the same adoption that Solana would have, right? I mean, it would be way better for token holders than for Solana holders. Yeah, totally.
Because it gets passed along.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously I know they also have like a ton in the pipeline. They're ramping up marketing right now, and I'm very bullish. I mean, I definitely. I mean, also new front ends are coming, right? I mean, it's already like horizontally scaling, and eventually, I mean, even if those are like bullshit casinos, if you like have hundreds of them, right? I mean, this is like.
Gonna add up.
This is, I mean, yeah, totally. It's going to be crazy.
I'm staking my WINR tokens right now, and I've in 8 days of staking it, because they just launched the WINR chain staking. I've actually made a lot more than I thought I would. I was shocked by how much I'm making, and I like sat down and did the math. I'm like, wow, I'm like making a good amount per month. But they're at like 700,000, in 60 days or whatever, 700,000 made in profit. But something like Rollbit claims that they're at like 30 to 60 million, depending on the month, per month. And at those numbers, if that's accurate, and if WINR was hitting that numbers, and again, the surface area to hit much, much bigger, if that's accurate, is insane. Then, the amount I'd be making per month is like $300,000 from staking my WINR. It's like crazy. I'm like, what?
Yeah, totally. This is also why this is like how it's going to be like a flywheel effect, right? I mean, once like the volume is pumping up, like the APY for like liquidity providers and stakers will just like go crazy. This is obviously then attracting like more liquidity and stuff. And this is like more tokens are going to be taken out of the circulation and like getting even more value accruals. So like this is the thing. I mean, I really love like if something makes sense, right? I mean, there are not many projects out there that really need tokens and that really have like proper value accrual. But for WINR, it's so obvious, like, if they get adoption, like it can go up only. And this is why I love it. I mean, now it's just about marketing and user acquisition, and then this can go only one way.
I agree so hard. I'm so bullish. WINR is going to be amazing.
Same,
Right now, what would you say is like your most controversial crypto take? Or take about crypto? It could be kind of whatever you interpret that to be.
I mean, a few weeks ago it was probably that I hate meme coins, but right now, I mean, not necessarily sure whether this is like a controversial take, but rather something that people don't really like to hear. But I think we are not that early anymore, right? I mean, people love this narrative that like we are so early and like, yeah. And I think the problem is like we are already like a, I don't know, 2.5 trillion asset class, right? I mean, Bitcoin is bigger than Meta or like Tesla or something. And we already have like huge institutions buying Bitcoin via the ETF with like BlackRock pushing it and stuff. And I think at some point there won't be like any buyers left, right? I mean, we maybe have like now the government like with Cynthia Lummis and then maybe pension funds in the end, but then like we won't grow any further, just like due to speculation. And I think this is the problem that I have like within this industry, like to some extent nowadays, that we are still lagging behind like massively when it comes to like valuation versus like innovation progress or like productivity, right? So I think most stuff is like massively overvalued in this industry. And if we don't accelerate kind of like the innovation process and the productivity of the space and rather keep aping like meme coins, then I think we will face like a huge challenge at some point. And this is why I believe I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I'm saying it's like a very valid like kind of like chance that like in 1 to 2 years, and like when we top with this cycle, I think it's an opportunity, like a chance that actually this was like a massive top of like a 15 years kind of like super cycle, and we will just go sideways for like 5 to 10 years or something like this until like productivity and innovation finally caught up again, right? And
Yeah.
finally kind of like justifies again crazy valuations, because right now, I mean, we are at a very bad state where we're just like always trying to kind of like justify why something is trading at like a particular valuation, but actually it isn't justified. I mean, it isn't. I mean,
Yeah.
look at Sui. I mean, Sui like I don't know, it launched like what, 2 years ago or something like this. I don't see like any exciting stuff happening on Sui, and it's trading like 25 billion or something like this. I mean, it's insane. I mean, this.
It seems like it's purely just, hey, this is going to be the next ETH. ETH is sitting at this market cap, therefore this
Exactly.
one should be at this market cap. I have heard that theory before, that kind of like we've been in a super cycle and that we're going to, like the internet, you know, like maybe this is our .com cycle, ending of the cycle. And then we pop so hard that it's like it just takes a long time to recover, and all the good projects kind of thrive and the bad ones don't. I think some of the reasons we haven't seen a lot of innovation, well, for one, we have seen a lot of innovation, but the innovation you're talking about, I think one of the big reasons we haven't seen that is purely regulation. And the thing about the last, you know, how much the SEC has like slowed down things and come after people. And I think when you open up the market to like deregulate, and people like, how much time do teams just spend on like not like legal fees and making sure that like they're compliant, and instead of just building? And how many people are afraid, that are good builders, afraid to come into the industry because they know if they screw up, they could go to prison or they could be sued. I think there's this, I think once you clear that up and you just allow people to innovate, that's when you're going to start seeing a lot more innovation, because we just don't have enough people from Silicon Valley and all these places coming in here and building startups that are new and dangerous and risky, and you need some the ability for people to do that. And I think maybe we've unlocked that, and maybe we start to see that moving forward.
I don't know. I mean, I think like a big problem of this industry, like funnily, is also like how easy it is to launch a token. You know, I mean, the problem is
True.
like that every project out there, or like every startup, is able to kind of like come to market that quickly, is kind of like misaligns incentives, right? I mean, imagine like a Web2 startup like going for IPO, just because like they launched like an MVP like with a shitty UX that no one is using, right? I mean, imagine that like who on Wall Street would like buy this shit? I mean, no one, right? And I think this is it's like way too easy for projects out there to just like create hype, to just like come to market without anything. I mean, you can't even launch on Uniswap, right? You don't even need like anyone like approving like a listing or something. And you will always find people who are like stupid enough just to buy like even like a 10, 20 million valuation just because like a random influencer on Twitter told them to do so, right? And it's way too easy for founders to just make a shit ton of money and repeat it again, like come up like with the next shitcoin. And
but wouldn't you say that the bar has been being raised? Because I remember in 2017, it was like literally when you launch a project, and as long as you had a cool name and a good white paper, you would make a ton of money. And then now in 2021, you had to launch a project and have some sort of use case where people, like there had to be some sort of product market fit on chain that kind of made sense. Then you would raise money. And I feel like each kind of cycle, the bar gets raised higher and higher the more people kind of push. And so don't you think like naturally the market will kind of work that out to where, you do have to do something to raise money and the market gets smart enough to say, hey, we're not going to fall for this again.
Yeah. I mean, to like a tiny extent, yes. But still, I mean, if I recall like last cycle, I mean, projects, like very solid projects were raising at like a 5, 10, maybe 20 million valuation, right? And I mean, we are also faking it. I mean, to be completely honest, right? I mean, let's say Scroll. I mean, Scroll was, no one is using Scroll. It was like purely airdrop farmers, right? And this is just like it's such a stupid cycle. And then like everyone is bullish about Scroll because like there are so many on-chain transactions and so much liquidity, and then it's coming to market and it's just bleeding out because no one is using the shit. And I think this is the big problem. Like we are always focusing on like how can we fake kind of like numbers, metrics? How can we like build up like a narrative? How can we make like hype marketing or something instead of just like focusing on how do we like solve problems? How do we create like a product that people really want, right? And I think to some extent the problem is also like that too many people were focusing on like infra plays because it was just like very obvious that like VCs were paying like a premium for like infra plays, right? So I'm rather going to build like an L2 than an app because I'm just like getting twice the funding for it. But I mean, we have.
I really think that's going to change. I feel totally. Like the layer 2s, you're right, there was way too many of them, but people know that now. And these high FTV launches are failing now. And we also had like things like Pump.Fun, Polymarket. We're seeing successful apps for like the first time, and they're making a lot of money. And I think you have those builders who are building right now, and then you're going to have the next batch. But it's kind of like VC investing where like most of them are going to fail. Like even in traditional VC investing, like 90% of those startups end up failing. I don't know. I'm very optimistic that we will change. I think the market is always going to put money where they think they can make money, and they'll keep doing that for as long as they can make money. So the L2 trade would play out for as long as people make mone. But when they stop making money, they'll shift elsewhere. And the builders are going to go where they think they could make the most money. And I do think the market eventually finds the right path.
But this is the thing. This is why we are also focusing way more on apps right now. I mean, we want people to build something that people just want to make use, right? I mean, if you think about like the future of crypto, I mean, if we want to have like mainstream adoption, like people won't care about like the tech that is like happening in the back end. They won't care about like blockchain at all, like or especially not like which blockchain they're operating on, right? They just want to have like a cool, like, I don't know, Instagram, TikTok that they want to use, right? And they don't give a shit about like what's happening in the back end. And this is why we also believe like infra will like become way more irrelevant, and like we rather want to focus on apps that kind of like accrue all the value, because like for us, like value is where the users are, right? And I mean, I also have the thesis that like probably some of the biggest winners of crypto are not even existing yet. So I think like we still get like some crazy apps that will change like the space as we know it, and they will accrue like most of the value.
I don't disagree. And I think look how good of a situation Pump's in. Like, they don't have a token. They don't have to worry about that right now. I guess they're thinking about releasing one. But they're just pulling in like hundreds of millions of dollars. They didn't have to launch a token. They don't have to worry about people complaining about price. And they're just making a ton of profits, and there's nothing to stop them. Apps are where you want to be. And I think builders need to realize that, like, hey, we don't need any more infra. We really don't. We're doing good. But what we do need is apps, and that's where you're going to make a ton of money.
Totally. Yeah, definitely agree.
One of your tweets said that let's assume that A16 crypto is right, and we're currently in the 1998 phase of the early internet. Imagine if you'd been early back then. Google, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and others didn't exist yet. Plus, you'd have the chance to invest in them in day one. The Web3 giants that will eventually reach trillion-dollar valuations might not even exist today. Billionaires are going to be made. This goes along with what you're saying. Do you think those trillion-dollar Web3 giants might be the future apps that are maybe even being built right now?
Exactly. Yeah, totally. I mean, in that respect, I'm very bullish on like Deepin and also SocialFi, right? I think like Web3 technology has kind of like the dynamics to come up like with social experiences that we can't even imagine yet. And I think this is also like, once we get like more people to focus on building apps, building exciting use cases, and also like having the right incentives, right? They just want to create like new cool experiences, and they don't just want to launch a token or whatever. I think like we would be surprised like what like these smart people in crypto would come up with. And this is why I'm super bullish. This is like kind of like we aren't that early anymore, but from that perspective, we are still super early, right? I mean, this doesn't necessarily like grow the market as a whole, but I think we would see like a lot of money shifting to stuff like this and just like accrue like a lot of value.
If we did get better regulation, and like, let's say traditional companies could choose to launch on chain and just launch a token like the way we do it, or launch a stock, do you see an influx of people just saying, hey, I'm going to launch a crypto token instead of like trying to IPO, because I can go to market a lot quicker. I don't have to worry about maybe raising through traditional VCs, and I can tap into like global fundraising. Do you see that happening? I
mean, it's kind of happening already, right? I mean, obviously, like owning a token isn't necessarily equity or like a share of like a company, but everyone is like treating it like this, right? And I mean, to be honest, we have like the thesis that kind of like tokens are digital equity, and we are treating it like this because if at some point like regulations won't lead us to the way that like that we can finally like treat tokens as like digital equity, we anyways have like a huge problem, right? Because then like 99% of the tokens out there are just like pure vaporware and like absolutely worthless. We need to get to this point where like tokens are like shares of the company, and where you can get like a share of like the revenue, and this is like the actual value accrual that people will care about, right? No one wants like staking, because then you earn even more worthless tokens and stuff. And we need to get there. If not, this industry is doomed, to be honest.
Can you imagine if Pump.Fun would have been able to do an ICO and it would be passing along its revenue to holders today? That would be so awesome. That'd be so amazing to have.
Totally. And this is where we need to get. I mean, we're trying to get there usually like with indirect ways, right? With like, I don't know, buybacks and burns and stuff, and like those random mechanisms. I think at some point we'll get there. And I'm very optimistic, because at some point like governments just like have to face it. But I think it's still like a few years away for sure.
A few years, but I'm really hopeful that maybe
totally,
with all these recent changes that comes sooner rather than later. And it seems like the market thinks so too, with Uniswap pumping like 30% as well.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people think they're going to be able to turn the fee switch. And awesome.
Totally.
Well, as always, none of this was investment advice. Crypto is crazy risky. You should always do your own research. And it has been awesome having you on, Simon. This was a really good conversation. It's good to hear your thoughts and insights in the market.
Nice. Yeah, appreciate you having me, and happy if I was like able to provide some insights. And yeah, cool. Thanks for having me.